right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here at Savoy. We got a great crowd here. We got a great program. And my name is Bruce Patton. I'm the curator here at Savoy. And I'd like to thank everybody for, spending a Saturday night here with us. And I'd like to do a little housekeeping first, just kind of tell you about the exhibits. Hopefully you got a chance to go out and look at the exhibits that are out there. We still have It's a Doozy. We have The Roar of the Jaguar. Small Black Muscle actually goes out this weekend, so this is the last time to see those. And we have Shelby Built coming in on Monday, so you can see them on Tuesday. And then we're here for the Cannonball Run cars, so hopefully you got to see those cars. And also don't forget our Savoy collection. So you can see in 25, we just talked about Shelby Built, and then the doozies go out in December, and we have Ferrari in America. So we got some really great cars coming in December. Now, here's a preview, if you haven't seen it yet, on exhibit coming in 2026. So kind of in order, I won't go through all of them, but we have cartoons, we have some special Corvettes coming in. We actually have some James Brown cars nobody has seen. They've been in his garage for 20 plus years, and we actually have exclusivity to actually bring them here to Savoy. So you can kind of go through the other ones here. I won't go through all of them, but we got some really great stuff coming up. Don't forget that the Gumball Rally is going to be next week here in the theater, so come by and see that, and it'll be a great movie, especially tie in here with what we're doing. And then A Christmas Story. Here's actually our 2026 schedule for movies, so they're in order, so they'll be up on our website here soon, so you can see what's coming in 2026 for movies. I'll give you a second to look at them. Okay. And then I'd like to thank Styles Auto Care, as always. Without their sponsorship, we wouldn't be able to do these Tireside chats here to bring in those programs. And so, yeah, thanks. Actually, we have a pretty big crew here from Styles, so if they'd like to stand up so we could thank them, I'd really appreciate it. Yeah. Some up here. So thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your sponsorship. Now, I know a lot of you guys already know Ed because he only has like 2 million followers or so, not. So he's the founder of VinWiki, and you may know Ed also went to Georgia Tech, but we won't hold that against him for UGA people. But he did set the Cannonball Run record. You probably saw his car out here, the Mercedes E55 that's out there. So I think that was 2013 when he did that. So he's going to be our MC for tonight and kind of take us through a lot of the stories from the Cannonball Run that you guys wonder if they're true or not. So we're going to kind of go through that. So I'm going to turn it over to Ed and let him introduce our other panelists.
Thank you so much. And first of all, let's give a huge round of applause to the whole Savoy team for putting on events like this and curating so many awesome displays. Cannonball Run is something that all of us as car enthusiasts have some connection to. And if you were here hoping that this was a screening of the film, I hate to disappoint you, but this is going to be considerably better than that, because it isn't just a 1981 Crazy Rat Pack movie. It was a real cross-country outlaw road race that happened. And today, fortunately, mine will be the least interesting stories here, because some of my great friends who actually ran in the 1970s are here. First of all, we got Bill Warner down at the end, who was the founder of the Amelia Island Concorde Elegance, flanked as well by his 1971 Porsche 911T that he ran in 1975. Bill had an amazing career throughout every aspect of the automotive industry. He's an accomplished racing driver, and you can see everything amazing that he's done. The way they were able to fit on this screen, and if they would type to cover the whole walls, they'd still have to keep going. But if you haven't been to the Amelia, it is an amazing event and certainly world-class. And Bill has an amazing career in photography and everything else in terms of journalism, and was a great friend of Brock Yates. And so we're glad to have you.
Thank you, Ed.
Next is Judy Stropus, who had an amazing career as a racing driver and is a Motorsports Hall of Fame inductee for timing and scoring, and worked with just about everyone in the world of racing, and also participated in Cannonball in 1972. And next to me, Lady Pamela Pam Yates, who was the wife of Brock Yates and an author herself, and no one has more passion for continuing to maintain and curate the legacy of Cannonball than Pam. She works tirelessly to make sure that all of us that continue to love Cannonball have things to continue to be entertained by, to share stories, to go to events and give talks like this. And so it is a huge honor to have Lady Pamela here.
Thank you.
So Brock Yates and Steve Smith, while working at Car and Driver magazine, had this crazy idea that it would be fun to see how fast we could drive across the country. And it became a lot of different things, including in some ways a protest against the speed limit and against all of the green initiatives of the day. But it was very much an expression of what we mean when we say that we love cars. And everyone here loves cars in some way, and everybody loves it in their own way. And so I think all of us here, at least on stage, have intersected at some point with the idea that we love a road trip, driving as fast as we can, and solving the problem of the cross-country road trip, at least in this context. Now, Cannonball was run competitively 4 times, in 1971, 1972, 1975, and 1979. And in 79, that's where a lot of the material that became part of the movie that released in 1981 came from. And so the first car that you were greeted with in the Cannonball display was the Ferrari Daytona that Brock Yates and Dan Gurney drove and won the first event in 1971. And now we've also got the representatives of 72, 75, and 79 sitting right here. And so just in 2 or 3 minutes, I'd love for each of you to tell us just a little bit about your Cannonball experience. We'll go into the deeper stories, but talk about going in 1972, if you don't mind, Judy.
The first one. Well, it wasn't the world's best experience for me. I put a team together. I realize now that it was the second year. So the first year I saw all my friends running, and I said, I should do this. So I thought it would be a lark to put together an all-female team. So I got Donna Mae Mims, who was a race car driver at the time, Think Pink, if anybody remembers, the Austin Healey Sprite. I think she was a national champion.
H production.
Yeah. And I never met her before, but I called her up and she said, sure, I'll do that. And I invited Brad Nemchek's wife, who Brad was running in another vehicle. And he said, why don't you invite my wife? I said, okay, I'll invite her. And I had all my racing friends put together the team. Bobby Rensler provided the Cadillac limousine. Mark Donahue got the tires for us, Goodyear. Roy Woods, if you remember Trans Am. He provided a friend of his who gave us money. And we decided to put it together. And in honor of Donna Mae, I bought these pink outfits, bell bottoms at the time, white belt, hip huggers, bodysuit, pink. And we got at the last minute sponsorship from the Wright Bra Company. All girls, why not? Donna Mae shows up not wearing one. I looked up her age at that time. She was 45 years old. Perky bosoms, absolutely. And, but I said, Donna Mae, we're being sponsored by the Wright Bra Company. This is probably not, these are the stories, but you wanted to.
Yes. No.
I think we're all interested.
And,
At least 2 of us. Yeah.
so I said, Donna, we're being sponsored by the Wright Bra Company. She goes, okay. And she said, well, maybe, at the cocktail reception, the PR guy might have some product on him, like people have, oh, here, have a piece of gum, or here, I represent STP, here's a can of STP. So maybe he has some bras in his pocket. Well, he didn't. But anyways, we didn't wear the outfits in the run. We changed to normal clothing, but in the movie, we're wearing pink outfits. But that's my 2-3 minutes, sorry.
That was wonderful.
Why don't you tell them what happened to the car?
Well, that's later.
Okay.
We have stories.
Don't go anywhere. The car has an interesting story itself. But perhaps the most iconic Cannonball photograph was the start of the 1975 run on the roof of the Red Ball parking garage in Manhattan. And that was actually the parking garage where car and driver would house the press vehicles that they were using at any given point, because it was near their offices. And so that became the starting line all the way up through 75. In 1979, they started in Darien, Connecticut as a Goodwives shopping center. But front and center on the cover of Car and Driver magazine was this car owned by Bill from 1975.
Yeah, well, bought that car in 1971 from Northlake Porsche Audi in Atlanta. You could buy a Porsche then for $7,900. Don't try that today. And Brock and I were friends, and we used to go-kart racing before the Daytona 24-hour. We'd run a track in Jacksonville and go racing. And we'd have people like Hurley Haywood and Peter Gregg, and we'd all go to these go-karts. Hurley would go out the afternoon before and pay the go-kart guy $50 to zip up his cart, so he was cheating even back then. And so one night we got a police officer to the chain link fence while we raced. Well, Brock said to me, he said, "Hey, I'm getting to do the Cannonball again. You want to do it?" I said, I had confidence I could do that. Confidence is a feeling you have when you don't truly understand the situation. And Tom Neal, who I used to race Camaros with, owned a GMC truck dealership, so I had this car. I was 3 years old. George Drolsom had sold his Carrera and had a plastic fuel tank. He had to put a fuel cell in it, so we put a 31-gallon tank in this car. It would go 600 miles. The driver's bladders wouldn't. We'd have to stop. And so we got to New York, and it was just another car. The lead car in the picture was supposed to be Jack May's white Dino with Rick Klein. It's leaking fuel all over the top of the garage. So they had to take it out and fix it, and Bill Ausler, who's a friend of mine, a photographer for Car and Driver, says, "I need a white car." There it is. The most famous white car. Huh? White. Well, there's three shades of white on that car. Don't look real close. So we got to New York, and it was like you said, it was a lark. We didn't think we were going to win, but the speed limit was 55, and we figured if we stayed in the 85 to 90 bracket, we'd just breeze right in. And then there were two guys who were on the Cannonball. And the thing was, when the Cannonball word went out, you weren't to discuss it. You weren't to say where it was going to go, when it was going to start. It was all top secret. Well, two yahoos in Ohio tell a local newspaper about it. And, of course, the Ohio and Indiana Highway Patrol was all over it. So Tom and I decided when we got to Harrisburg, we were going to go down to Knoxville and cross 40. That only cost us about 2 hours. But that was a bad decision. We had something... it was interesting. We took bananas, granola bars. We had the 31-gallon gas tank, a fuzz buster, if you remember those little box that would tell you when to reach for your wallet. And so we leave New York and we're going down. We left at 7 o'clock. You try to figure out what time you get to Los Angeles, so then you figure out the time you're going to leave New York, so you miss the traffic in Los Angeles. Well, we messed that up too. And we're getting down to Virginia, and I'd driven in the rain, pouring rain, from New York City to somewhere in Staunton, Virginia, somewhere around there. So I said to Tom, "It's time for you to take over." And he says, "Okay." So he gets behind it. And he owns a GMC truck dealership. He sells Fruhoff and GMC and Freightliners, right? He should talk like a trucker. So I had a pattern where I could sound like a trucker, and the license plate you look on the car is Shazam, which I picked up when I was in the Air Force. When I bought the car, I had to pick out a license plate that was suitable for a Porsche. So I figured Shazam, which just stands for the strength of Samson, endurance of Hercules, the speed of Achilles. That's what becomes a cartoon character. So our CB handle was Captain Marvel. And everybody had a CB handle with a list of who was on the Cannonball and what their CB handle was. So I turned it over to him in Staunton, and about 30 miles down the road, he starts going, I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Never could drive at night." I said, we got 30 more hours to go. So I said, "Well, try the radio." So we had a CB set up, and he goes, "Hello, truckers." I said, No. you got to call them good buddy. He said, well, they're not my good buddy. I said, you sell trucks, sound like a trucker. Well, that didn't work. So I stayed up all 41 hours from New York. I drove, New York to Staunton. He drove about 30 miles. Then I took it from there to Knoxville, Tennessee when the sun came up. He was all right when the sun came up. And he drove to Little Rock, Arkansas, and I drove the rest to Needles, California. And we're coming up on the fruit inspection station at the California line. And we were running about 100. And I started slowing down. He said, what's wrong? I said, there's a guy crossing the road up there. He says, there's no guy crossing the road. I said, it's your time to drive. But we didn't do too well. I was telling you, for a guy that finished 14th place, I've had more chicken dinners at Rotary clubs than anybody finished 14th place anywhere.
Earned every one. That's it. So there was a break, and then they did one final Cannonball in 1979, and that is where Lady Pamela comes in.
That's where I come in. I'm happy to say good evening. Nice to see you. I wish Brock was here to share it. You would have loved him. You really would have loved him. He was everybody's kind of real guy. And something that was so wonderful about him is that he always had time for a hello or a good guy, slap on the back. We had a pub, Cannonball Pub, of course, and men would come in specifically and see Brock there just having a beer or just talking to somebody, and they'd go in and slap him on the shoulder and say, hey, Yates, how are you doing, and whatever, and talk to him as if they've known him forever. And he had terrible time with names, so he never knew who anybody was called. But he would, he and Dan Gurney would call each other team leaders. You know, hey guys. You know, they were team buddies, and they always were that way and greeted themselves that way. But the people that would come into the pub was kind of a strange phenomenon. The men who came in and kind of smacked him on the back and pretended or thought really that they knew each other, it was kind of hallucinating. We couldn't blame it on the beer or the wine or anything, but it was a phenomenon that happened. And these men would say, hey, you know what I miss the most? Not going to Watkins Glen with you and sitting there and watching the races. And he'd come home just absolutely in a quandary saying, I don't know that person. I never went anywhere with that person. How could that person think that? And it was just common situation. And I found out from some of the other talent in the movie that's a really very, very definite phenomenon amongst people who are well known, and the public gets a relationship with them that transcends the kind of hello, how are you, nice to meet you. There's a fantasy type of thing that goes on there, and that was something that he had his whole life, and it would just flow. He would not understand that for anything, but he was a very serious man and a very serious writer, and I'm always kind of compensating for the Cannonball because people think he was Looney Tunes and out of his mind.
He was.
Well,
Yeah.
that's your opinion. He was my husband, Yeah, and
But in a good way.
in a good way. Good try.
No,
Good try.
that was wonderful.
I'm not in
no,
the
he
middle
was-
of this, Ed. That's the same
Exactly, right.
Well, let me tell you, no, he was a very serious guy, great sense of the absurd. That's why he married me, I think. But he always had this, I think, a dream that he wanted to do something important with his words. And the people that have known him, dead or alive, And this young man here was one of those very perceptive people that was a fan of Brock's. And I met them all these fans, by kind of happenstance, really, a couple of years ago. And Stacy, my daughter, and I kind of had a feeling that we didn't want to meet this another young culture in the Cannonball, because it's not going to be the Cannonball that we remembered and whatever. Well, that's kind of nonsense, because more people's patterns and people's feelings morph and change with the times. And there was just a different culture with the young men that were trying to duplicate the Cannonball event. And Stacy and I were at a Concord, and I said after Brock had died, what is it about the Cannonball legacy and the Cannonball that makes you such committed fans? And they all, to a person, said his words. And I got a goosebump just then, because I don't think he ever would have imagined that he would have been in the position he was in with his fans. And it was so touching, because what he did say and what he did feel did make a difference, and was a very important mechanism for change in magazine writing about sports cars and racing cars. What Brock and David E. Davis and Steve Smith had created with Car and Driver magazine in those days was a venue to upgrade the influence of publishing, the influence of marketing cars and selling cars and consumer interests. And so he would have known that he had accomplished very much of what he wanted to do, and that we were all very proud of him for doing it, aside from the fact that he had his crazy moments that he would just do strange things, like the Cannonball.
That's right.
But anyway, that's just a long-winded overview of kind of what was going through Brock's head at the time.
That's right. And Pam's right, there are so many people, most of you I'd assume here, that found some inspiration in the idea of Cannonball, in Brock's writings, in the movie, in the crazy stories, and that's why Bill gets to keep eating good dinners talking about it. And I'm sure that is not going to stop anytime soon. But, some of us simply made the mistake of not being born by 1979, and that kept us from being able to do this. But that didn't mean that we weren't just enamored and fascinated with the idea of how fast could you drive across the country. And there were a couple small continuation events that happened through the 1980s, and then there was really nothing. But you're going to see a lot of modern cars out there at the display here at Savoy that represent that modern pursuit of Cannonball. And the first of those is a 2000 BMW E39 M5 that was driven by Alex Roy and Dave Maher in October of 2006 across the country in 31 hours and 4 minutes. And I was in college at the time, and I saw that, having already had my own Cannonball dreams. And I mean, this is a moon landing for me, just the idea that someone has finally interpreted this idea of Cannonball in a modern context. And Brock went on to write his book in 2001 about the history of Cannonball with contributions from you guys, and it was just so cool to hear all of the stories that had come. And so there was this reignition of the idea of Cannonball, and so seeing Alex and Dave go out and do that certainly inspired me to continue to evolve that concept. And in 2013, there's a Mercedes CL55 out there that I used to beat that record. We did it in 28 hours and 50 minutes, and that record stood until 2019 when the silver E63 AMG beat me, two guys that met telling stories in my warehouse, at 27 hours and 25 minutes. And then they shut the whole world down. They told the cops to stop working, and everybody beat it all the time. And it got beaten every weekend for about 2 or 3 months in 2020, and it settled in later that year with the white Audi S6 doing it in 25 hours and 39 minutes, which is still the fastest anyone has ever done it. And you're right, Pam, that Brock was never really, sure how to address the idea of people still wanting to do this, and he knew after the movie came out that there was a lot to go on there. But, I think what we've learned in continuing to explore and understand these stories is that, it's still the same love of the car, love of the road trip, love of the challenge, but nothing comes close to the craziness of what happened back then. Maybe because the cops are a little bit more serious about what happens when they find us doing it. But one car that is not available to be here is the limousine from 1972. Judy, would you like to tell us why?
Well, I know, I mean, nobody asked me for it, but I might have been able to go back to El Paso to the junkyard and see it in a heap somewhere, or I could have brought the heap, but that didn't happen. We have no idea where that car is. I don't know if you know the story of what happened on our adventure. We took off from Red Ball Garage, and we came down. We did the southern route because there were threats of snow on the route that they were all taking. So we were going to go the southern route. We were going to be smart. So we get to Atlanta. Now here we are in this area. And the one funny part is it was my turn to sleep in the back, and Donna Mae was driving, and I slept for maybe an hour or something, and I wake up, and I'm still seeing the same signs on 285. So apparently we were going around. I was the navigator, so when I was asleep, everyone was just sort of driving along, and then I remember we got stopped in the dark. Here we have actual decals on the car. We have helmets on, or at least Donna Mae has a helmet on in the back seat. She didn't trust Peggy's driving, so she always wore a helmet on the back with that portage on, that famous little porta potty. Anyway, so we got stopped, and this is in one of in the movie the part where the policeman stops Adrienne Barbeau, who is playing my part very loosely, and she zips down the pink outfit, and flirting with the policeman. My story when I wrote it was how nice that policeman was. Here we are, these women going 100-something miles an hour in a Cadillac limousine with decals on it and helmets on, and he stops us. And he's so nice and so polite when he took us to the police department to pay our ticket. And that was, I was like, I fell in love with this state policeman. And so we got through that. And then luckily we made it into the next county because we got stopped again by some other policeman who was just ordinary. But the first one was really special. So we made it through, and we kept going, and we kept going and going. The car started to rattle some more. The heat went off. We're in the middle of Texas. Peggy was so excited because she'd never done this before. She never really slept on her when it was her time, and so she kind of she's going 100-something miles an hour, and she kind of dozed off a little bit, and I just went like this, and and she panicked and slammed on the brake, and we're up on the hillside and upside down, and we landed on our wheels. And Donna Mae was sleeping in the back with her helmet on, with no belt, and that porta potty that had nothing in it but the chemicals, just the chemicals, because we never used it. And that apparently Donna Mae wrote in Brock's book about. I didn't know that until I read the story.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had no idea. And so we had to call up. So we're upside down, and a trucker was coming by, and he saw it, and he stopped, and he was probably saying, "What the hell?" And so the police came, and I have no idea where that car is, but so we had all that money. And so I just flew us all back first class, back home. And Peggy was just beside herself. She was crying most of the time. We had to call Brock. This was before cell phones. I don't know where we found a phone, but we had a phone. I guess we had a motel. We called Brock. I said, "You got to call Brock." And so Peggy's crying and crying to Brock, and so sorry about because that was the one thing he did not want
To happen, yeah.
And that was the end of our adventure. So that's it. But that's my story. I have no more to tell.
Well, the stories never end, but that was the only real accident in the history of the pursuit, according to
That's something. That's
so
something.
somebody had to do it, and it didn't involve any other cars.
You should be. You should be.
So, in the 50-plus year pursuit of Cannonball, there has never been an incident or accident involving another car.
It had to be 3 girls.
That's it. Well,
Oh,
and
sure.
that's a little bit because they ignore the fact that John Harrison crashed in 1979, but that's okay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you're not alone.
Okay, good.
This Lotus spun out in Ohio and did not finish. But we took him across so he could finish his run in a limousine, actually, a few years ago. Well,
Oh, I just forgot to tell you about the limousine, which was the question, was that Bobby Rinslow, who had provided the limousine, we called Bobby and said, oh, we crashed the car. He says, okay, I'll take care of it. Apparently, he had rented it. So he calls up the rental car company and says, hey, guys, I really love that car. I'm going to buy it from you. Is that all right? And so he bought the car outright. I mean, I guess they had some title paper somewhere, but it's in a heap somewhere in El Paso. But sorry.
oh, by all means. Now, Bill, you also found some trouble in West Virginia, but you never told me if it was such an attractive and charming police officer.
It really wasn't me. It was Toli Aratunov, whose dad had invented the Retta pump for offshore drilling. So Toli was well-heeled, but he was a little bit on the, and he'll admit this, he was a little bit off-center. So he had a...
Beautifully so, in a good way.
in a good way.
Bless
so
his heart.
He bought this Chrysler Bristol, which was a terrible car. I mean, it was ugly. It was painted green. Looked like with a brush. And he and a guy named Bill Pryor from Nashville, Tennessee. Toli was from Bartlesville, Oklahoma, Tulsa. And they decide, Toli, like I said, Toli was a little off-center. So he goes to his mystic and advisor to lay out the route, you know. We had something really clever back then. We had a big piece of paper that folded. They called them maps. I don't know if you remember those. But he had this thing led to Charleston, West Virginia. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're in Charleston, West Virginia, fueling the car up. And it had a French license plate that said Hauty, Hauteur for haughty. This young girl comes up and says, that's a pretty neat car. They said, yeah. He says, where are you headed? I said, we're going to Los Angeles. He says, to Charleston? He said, yeah. I says, it's 2 o'clock in the morning now. She says, I need a ride home. Would you give me a ride home? Sure. Hop in the back of the car. You're way ahead of me. So they pull out of the gas station, and the license plate's dangling from a bolt. So a police officer pulls them over to tell them they're losing their license plate. And Toli was wearing a shirt with a scantily clad lady painted on the shirt. And the officer says, that's not a very nice shirt to be wearing out in public, is it? He says, where are you from? He says, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he looked at Bill Pryor, who had glasses like Coke bottles, and said, and where are you from, sir? He says, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. He looks at the little girl in the back seat, says, where are you from, darling? He says, right here, Charleston. He says, how old are you? He said, 15. So they got arrested and taken to jail for suspicion of violation of the Mann Act for transporting kids across state lines. And
I didn't know this.
oh yeah, they got held up for 2 hours. They finished last that year. They had to wait. They had to wait till the attorney's office opened in Nashville and got them out of jail. One of the other funny stories, William Jeans, who I wish was here tonight. We were going to try to have him here. He and his wife were on a tour of Asia, Malaysia. Yeah. They were in a motorhome. They had a Travco motorhome with a Cotton Owens Dodge motor in it. It would do about 100 miles an hour. I mean, a big motorhome going 100 miles an hour. And Bill Broderick, who was a public relations guy for Union Oil, sponsored it. They all had uniforms. Hat Man. He always put the ball caps on the drivers. That was Bill Broderick. And they hired a chef named Jerry Scarlata. They had a menu printed. And Jerry's in the back of the motorhome while they're running down the road 100 miles an hour. Well, Joe Frasone, who's a NASCAR driver, is driving one night. He had no fear. And William was asleep in the right front seat. And William wakes up. It's all white. He blinks his eye. It's all white. I don't know what's going on. He finally wakes up to know that Joe Frasone was drafting a semi-rig 3 feet off the back of it. Yeah, there are a lot of funny stories. Then there was Peter Brock, Jack Crowell, and Dick Gilmartin, who dressed up as Catholic priests. And they were loaned a Mercedes sedan, and they got caught for doing like 90 miles an hour in New Mexico in the middle of the night.
And they're dressed in priest.
Oh, they had priest collars. And Gilmartin looked like a priest. I mean,
yeah.
he was really good. So he says, I'll handle this. So he gets out of the car, and the officer says, Father, you're pushing a little bit. Is there any reason you be doing 90 miles an hour down the interstate at 2 o'clock in the morning? And he said, well, we're late in delivering the Monsignor's car to Los Angeles, and we were just going a little faster, and I wish you wouldn't write me up for this. Could you put another number down? Well, a Catholic highway patrolman, he said, well, Father, if I put another number down, I'd be lying. You wouldn't want me to lie, would you? So it worked against him. The other one that worked against me was a judge in Jacksonville gave me a plate that said, 4th Judicial Circuit State Attorney's Office. I figured if we got pulled over, the cop would say, oh, state attorney, you can go ahead. No. My lovely wife, Jane, of 59 years, who put up with all this madness, flew out to California. We're driving back in Banning, and they get me with an airplane. I pull over. I said, this will be duck soup. He'll see that plate. We'll be out of here. The officer walks over. Oh, you're an attorney. no argument.
No discussion at all. Of course, when you think about trying to get away with speeding all the way across the country, disguises and ruses and things like that all certainly come up. And there's a storm chaser sticker on the M5, and they had all this instrumentation to imply that they were chasing storms through the middle of the country. I had a cooler full of pig hearts, but I didn't believe my co-driver could keep up the ruse of transcon, transplant, transport. But there have been some lovely, but none of them hold a candle to yours. The 1979 story of Brock Yates and Hal Needham piloting the ambulance across, where you were the patient and Lyle Royer was the doctor.
The senator's wife.
The senator's
Senator's
wife.
Yes, we wanted to kind of just kiss it off, It was just a little adjustment there. Yeah, senator's wife. And Brock and Hal were at Watkins Glen, and they were watching the races, obviously. And Hal Needham came up and did a TV show on salt flats in the West, and for CBS. And Brock was working on that shoot with him. And then they decided to come and stay at. Brock decided that Hal should come home and stay with us and be our guest and whatever. And so they drifted off to a bar in Watkins Glen, and the two of them spent the entire day planning this new event called the Cannonball Run. And they came back at home where I was wallpapering because I didn't have a gun where I could really shoot Brock. So I did a haul of wallpaper. I did that a lot. And but Hal Needham came in and said, Pammy, we got this deal. We're going to do it. CBS, it'll cover it. It's going to be great. And I said, I'm not liking the vibes from this. And I'm covered with wallpaper paste. And I'm not happy with what I'm seeing is going to happen here, because I know what's going to happen here. What happens is Hal Needham says, we're going to do another Cannonball, but we're going to do it my way. This is going to be the way it's going to be. And I said, oh, well, that's great. And I assumed that you're going to get CBS to do it. And he said, no, Brock and I are doing this together. And I said, oh, we're in big trouble. Brock couldn't plan his way out of a paper bag. I swear to you, he couldn't. So anyway, Hal Needham and Brock are now euphoric because they've got this new event they're going to do. And so Hal Needham said, don't worry about it. I got the best idea. We're going to win this thing, because Needham is a stunt man for Hollywood, and so everything's a big deal, and everything's a big, big success. So Hal says, yeah, you're going to go in an ambulance you're going to go as a patient in an ambulance. And I said, I beg your pardon? I have 2 little children, and I'm going to do what? And Yates is standing behind Hal, and he's kind of going. And I knew that meant that Brock didn't think this was really a grand idea, and he was being talked into it by Hal, who could talk the birds out of the trees. He was just the most interesting, utterly American personality you could have known. He was wonderful. But anyway, so I get suckered in to be the ambulance, the patient in the ambulance, and we are going to run the Cannonball. And thus it began to unfold. And when the movie was developing, I was replaced, and I'm very bitter about this, by Farrah Fawcett.
Quite the downgrade.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I really needed to hear that. Thank you.
Well, they're luckier than I was. She had Adrienne Barbeau, and you had Farrah Fawcett. And that
Dom
guy who
DeLuise.
played me was Dom DeLuise.
What can I tell you?
It's true.
What can
I was Captain Marvel, and he was Captain Chaos.
Chaos. It really kind of blossomed out of. It kept on going. It was such a, and I think that Brock felt that if he could get Hal to go back home and didn't get him to have him stay with us, he basically unwind and realized this premise of his was absolutely nuts. And so we kept trying to get rid of Needham because we didn't want to encourage this to go any farther, because even we were starting to think that he was nuts. And we just realized it was Hollywood. But yes, and so it blossomed. And Burt Reynolds was really angry at the Oscars. He wanted an Oscar. And he was competing with Sally Field, who was his latest squeeze, because she was getting really great reviews in theater.
They like me. They really like me.
They like no, that's Adrienne Barbeau. We're talking.
No, that was.
You really like me.
Yeah.
You really
Yes,
like me.
I'm the
Yes,
one who
yes.
got an
And it's
Oscar.
Oscar, yes.
Yeah.
And of course, Hal was really teed off because this was all going to be a great idea, and we were not jumping on the bandwagon too fast, because all Brock could think of was he had a career, and what was going to happen. He knew his peers were going to come down real heavy on him because it was a crazy thing, and it was not his caliber. His peers, the Hollywood people, the print and the people that write all the reviews and stuff, think they're pretty terrific. They're really the best of all things. And Brock's would be downgrading his career to produce some dialogue like that, and to write a movie that would be silly, and the public would hate it just as much as the Hollywood people would hate it. And to his dismay, when we walked out of the rehearsal room and the reviews, Brock, we walked out of the screening, and it turns out that Brock, we just walked out, the two of us, after we'd seen it alone without any of the sycophants around, and so telling you how great it was, and coming along for the ride. But Brock, as soon as he came out of that specialty, the screening room, he said, "I'm dead. My career is dead." He said, "They'll kill me. They're going to kill me." And I said, "I was trying to avoid this conversation." And he said, because we just walked out into the sunset, the two of us feeling so isolated, and we didn't know what we were going to do with his career if they really came down hard on him. He was very sensitive about that. But the deal was done, and hooray for Hollywood. And Burt just kept screwing around and changing the screenplay endlessly because Bert wanted Dom in the show. He didn't care anything about the movie because he expected that he wanted to stick it to the Hollywood establishment because they did not give him an Emmy for being a wonderful actor. So he was just going to do this stupid movie, make as much money as he could.
More than anyone ever had.
Be more than any, yeah, and that's what he said. He said, I'm going to make more money than anyone has ever made up front in a movie. And screw them. And that was his whole attitude. So the movie would morph and change every day. And poor Yates would be running to Bert's house to rewrite more screenplay for the next fan or the next actor that was going to be in the movie. What you do in Hollywood is you let go of anything that you're proud of, and it gets changed around by the acting that goes in it and the person who's in the movie. This is a myth that people do their movies and their whole soul and their livelihood and everything is dependent on this. There's a certain, finished a movie with Michael Mann on Ferrari, and that was taken from a book that Brock had written on Ferrari. It was as long as the War and Peace was not as comprehensive as this Ferrari biography, but being prideful of a talent that you have, and you're doing something in Hollywood to make a difference. Don't bother, because it doesn't work out. I mean, it's not anything that you bring home and say, I'm really, really proud of that. It happens a lot, yes, but it happens more than enough to say that it's not a game changer when it comes to somebody's talent in movies. So anyway.
No, for sure. And I think that's part of the enigma of Cannonball, is that there is the reality of what really happened in the original races. There are the ways that we pay tribute to it today, and then there is the way that it was depicted in cinema. And the sort of the curation of the legacy moving on is how we reconcile all of those narratives. And Bill, I know through the show and at Amelia and different exhibits that you've done and everything, that's always been a big part of it. Is like, where does it fit into car culture?
Yeah, you have to get a theme and work with it. One thing that I wanted to discuss that not many people didn't remember, but Brock was a kind of Svengali. If he's going to do something, you're going to follow him. He's going to go off a cliff, you go with him. So he called me one day and said, we're going to do something else. Man, they didn't want to do New York to LA anymore. So we're going to do one lap of America. I said, how's this going to work? He said, well, we're going to leave the lock, stock, and barrel in Darien, go to Boston, Detroit, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Diego, El Paso, San Antonio, New Orleans, Miami, Jacksonville, Richmond, and back. I said, good, one lap of America in one day, or in one sitting, one sitting. And I said, well, that sounds good. So I got my old friend George Drolson, who I used to race with in Porsches. I drove Camaros, he drove Porsches. And he said, yeah, let's do that. And then we got Dick Storito, who I used to race against in SCCA, and he said, yeah, that sounds like fun. So we had to get someone to fund it, so I was on the staff of Road and Track magazine. In fact, I'm the only guy on the staff of Road and Track magazine that was ever on the cover of Car and Driver. So George called up Porsche and said, he had a Porsche Audi dealership, and see if we could borrow an Audi. And they said no. So we called Mercedes-Benz and said, gee, we're going to be doing this, and it'd be great to drive one of your cars. And they said, no. So I read where Hertz unlimited mileage cars could be rented for $39 a day.
They always say yes.
Yeah, so I rented a Lincoln Town car from Kennedy Airport, and we took it up to Bill Mitchell's race shop, who used to prepare cars for Judy and I. And Walter Hayes, who was head of public relations of Ford, airshipped us in heavy-duty springs and shocks and sway bars and told us, don't tell you where you got this and don't return it. And we put a 30-gallon fuel bladder in the back of the Hertz car, and then CBA flew in a guy who took the bumper guards off and put big 4B Oscar lights on it, The rule was we were not going to drill a hole in that car, but we were going to use everything we could, you know. So 9,610 miles, 8 days, and $39 a day later, we turned the car in. It hurts. Well, they only asked us, are you going to return it where you picked it up? We said, yeah. We didn't tell them we were going to Boston, Detroit. And so Ennis whips out his Pan Am card to get 2,000 bonus points to add more insult to injury. But that was another Cannonball that's got lost in the records.
What year was that, and did you?
83.
And what did you have to pay for those days? You had to pay per mile.
No, I'm personally responsible for the removal of the unlimited mileage program.
No, that was before they had unlimited.
No, it was $39 a day unlimited mileage.
Oh, so, okay, but prior to that, you used to have to pay for.
Now, unlimited mileage only applies within certain states now. You can't go beyond state boundary. I mean, we kind of push the envelope on that.
And One Lap of America goes on today, managed by Brock Yates' son. And there's, I've done it, Doug's done it. We had a whole lot of fun, kind of in that meaning of continuing the legacy. There is also a different modern interpretation that we have done that I learned about after I had set the record, is there are people who do it in old cars in period, or cheap cars, kind of inspired by the 24 Hours of Lemons. And so there's a 450 SEL 6.9 that a couple of years ago set the fastest time in a competitive event, in an event called the C2C Express, and that was 30 hours and change. And so, you know, I think we've all been inspired to chase our own types of cannonballs, and I hope that the stories certainly continue. But we do want to take some time for some Q&A. Oh, after Judy says this.
I just want to make sure you realize that the original name is the
Cannonball Baker Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash.
And Cannonball Run was just the title of the movie.
That's right.
Yes,
So.
that was, yeah, absolutely. And Brock had chosen Cannonball Baker as his hero in the early days of, Cannonball Baker was really a marvelous. He did a lot of
Point-to-point drives.
pointed, yeah, and he was kind of an outlaw in his own way. But so he dedicated everything to this man, Cannonball Baker, who was a real man.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, yeah.
Like a real man?
Well,
Just a real
I-
Well, he
I
did it
thought
in a
about that as
motorcycle.
I said
He
that.
did?
Yeah.
He did cross country in the motorcycle back in the
Street.
30s.
Well, oh, yeah, and
Yeah.
Mary Davis, who owned the Portofino, she was an extraordinary woman driver, and she, had the Portofino. There was a landfill project, and she put her money down on that, and that's where the Portofino came in.
I think the last time, I've been trying to search for the records that Cannonball Baker did a coast to coast. He did for Pontiac in 1959. Just before he died, he was just approaching his 90s. And the route then was San Diego to Savannah, because that was
really?
the shortest.
Yep.
By the way, I got to tell you, the one thing on the One Lap of America, before I rented the car, I got the rental agreement, took it to my attorney. And I said, would you read this and see if there's anything we're doing here that we could get sued for? And he said, you got to be out of your mind. He said, the rental agreement says I will not use this vehicle in any form of competition. You've already broken the rule.
No, there's no competition. You weren't going like this.
Yeah, well, it was. Well, that would be treating the attorneys of Hertz Rent-A-Car and my attorneys.
That's it. Who's got some questions?
Okay, we have microphones, so if you would, wait for us to get to you with the microphone.
I've got one right here in the front.
There we go.
Typically, how many automobiles, if that's the right word for it, were in a Cannonball Run, and what was the scope of the different kinds of vehicles that were in a particular run?
I think we had 18 in 75. And we had everything with Sandy Satullo, who was a restaurateur from Ohio, had a restaurant group called a Copper Kettle. He ran a silver Buick. And I said, with the name Copper Kettle, what are you doing in a silver Buick? He says, you catch on fast. And the other years, with One Lap of America, I think we had like 60 cars or something.
Oh, sure, and now they'll have well over 100. 72 was low teens, if I recall.
Who are you talking to?
You.
Yeah.
No clue.
There we go. Exactly.
She
And
doesn't-
79
she
was the
doesn't own
biggest.
up to any of it. She really doesn't.
And 79 was 40s? Give or
Yeah,
take?
they're about, yeah.
And of
And
course-
we had people coming from England
That's right.
in costume to run the Cannonball.
We had everything from Rolls Royces to crew cab pickups to Porsches. And I hate to say this, the Porsche is the ideal car to do it. Never won it, you know.
That's right.
It's just way
Ferraris
work.
kept winning, of all things.
Of
And
all
we all
things.
think
well,
it's
a Jaguar won it.
That's right,
And
in
I never knew of a Jaguar that would cross 3 states without breaking down.
That's valid. Although the Jag race cars outside
Oh,
are
they're nice, yeah.
spectacular.
My question is kind of small. On the Porsche, I've visited the museum before. On the steering wheel, there's a signature. They
Yeah.
couldn't figure out what that signature was.
Emerson Fittipaldi.
Thank you.
That's a Fittipaldi wheel in there, and when he was our honoree at Amelia, I just took the wheel off and took it to him.
Okay, up here.
What cars were the actual winners of the races?
That's a good question.
Yep, so 71, it was the Daytona with Yates and Gurney. 72 was, who won in 72?
No idea.
I don't remember.
75 was,
That was Jack May and Rick Klein
Oh,
and
that's
Ferrari
right,
Dino.
Jack.
And 79 was Hines and Yarborough in the Jag.
In the Jaguar, yeah.
Yep, and that was 3251.
I understand that car's been found.
It was found in a junkyard, no engine, but and the floors rusted out of it, and Richard Rawlings owns it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, or Dennis Collins.
Okay, up here.
Was there an entry fee, and how did you decide who got to be in it or not to be in it?
I don't remember paying an entry fee.
They would put an ad out in Car and Driver that let people know, and you could send like a self-addressed stamped envelope
Yeah.
in to, and I'm sure he agonized over who to allow, and
Oh, he did. To show you how kind of astute he was was after all the Cannonball runs were over, and we were kind of setting low in terms of running the event again. He was called to come to Sarasota, Florida. A former Cannonball participant wanted to show Brock the car that he bought to run the Cannonball and win the Cannonball. And the win the Cannonball was the catch in this, because it set up the guy's basic mental state in terms of what he thought he was going to accomplish in this event. And by that I mean we got out at the man's house, and he was a fine man, and he had run in the Cannonball before, and he was very, kind of committed, and he was really jacked up. He bought a car that he was going to use in a run in the Cannonball, and I think it was a Lamborghini Countach, and that as soon as he said to Brock, "And I'm going to win the Cannonball with this car," Brock's body language changed, and I was aware of that. But Brock was nice and welcoming and whatever, and and awed over this car that he was sure this man was so proud of. And we excused ourselves, and Brock said, "Gee, I've got to get back to the office and work and stuff." And we go out to the car. We get in our car, and he sits in the car, and I can tell that something's bothering him. And I said, "What happened in there?" And he said, Pammy, I probably can never do the Cannonball again. I cannot take the risk, because if men like him are buying cars like that to win the event, he said that man is not good enough of driver to handle that car and without hurting somebody. And it was just said like that, sitting behind the wheel of the car, and he sealed the fate of the Cannonball Run for a long, 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 long time, because he wouldn't do it. He just knew that was not going to be a good fit and that it was dangerous. So he was, and he never flailed around and was upset because, oh my God, I can never do it again. He was very matter of fact, and we didn't do it again for a long, long, long time.
And when we crashed, it was never publicly announced. It was never told, and nobody knew that we had crashed until the book. And then, but after that crash, Chris Economaki was still alive and writing his famous column in National Speed Sport News, and all he said in his column, he says, if you see Judy Stropus and you ask her how she ended up in the Cannonball Run, and that's all he said. And that was the subtle reference.
There you go.
We've got one up here.
How did the idea of the ideal Cannonball Run car go from the 70s, where we have like the Porsche here and the other in the Ferrari, and so it was a race or an event for sports cars, grand tours, to the modern day cars where they're sports sedans, heavily modified, like the Audi and the Mercedes-Benz. How did that evolve over time?
Sure. I think the Daytona and the Dino were obviously sports cars, but they were really touring cars. And as the engines got so big, especially in the 90s and 2000s, the fuel economy just got to the point where it was really, really hard, and the suspensions weren't capable of carrying enough fuel. And so as the Q cars or the super sedans kind of became available starting in the late 90s to 2000s, it really changed the idea of what might be the right recipe. You're also talking about adding a tremendous electrical load with the modern gadgets that we would use. I mean, Alex was using night vision cameras and things like that. I had 4 radar detectors and 2 laser jamming systems, an ambulance traffic light changer, which fell off my windshield. We need to put that back up. CB radios and scanners and all this stuff. And so, it's better in those cases to start with something that obviously already has a pretty robust electrical system, and that's already pretty heavy, so that the weight of the fuel doesn't change it as massively, because he usually got 31 gallons, we've got 67.
I'd like to coattail on that, because the early Cannonballs wasn't so much about winning.
No.
Right.
It was going and demonstrating that fast drivers weren't dangerous drivers first, which Brock was trying to promote. But it was kind of a run what you brung thing, and it was everything. There was a Porsche, there was a Dino, there was a motor coach that would do 100 miles an hour.
Vans.
There were 2 American airline pilots who bought a 51 Studebaker for $150, drove it to California, just left it in the parking lot. That's true. And so it was about a safe demonstration. Because Brock was very, very concerned that if someone ran into a school bus full of nuns and there was a bad deal, the magazine didn't like it.
Of course.
I never thought there was a lot of risk in what we did, because back then, actually, there was a little bit of lane discipline. They leave the left lane full, empty, so you could run 85, 90 miles an hour. I know that going through Virginia at night after Tom Neal fell asleep, you had to find out, you had to brief the truckers that you were coming. If you came blowing up on a truck and went by, it would light up, the truckers would do a rolling roadblock, and they'd catch up with you. So I kept a repartee going with all the truckers, Captain Marvel, trying to talk as country driver as I could. Says, you can't marvel, we're westbound and down. And the trucker came back one time, I blew by one at about 80, 90 miles an hour. Trucker says, "Hoo-wee, Marvel, you're really going. Where are you going tonight?" I said, "Shaky City," which was Los Angeles. He said, No, tonight. Where are you going tonight? I said, "Shaky City."
That's it. Excellent.
So my question is, in the movie they showed the people leaving the Red Ball garage and hitting a time clock. How did you actually?
Yes.
How did you actually keep
That's
the time?
exactly what happened there. Yeah, absolutely.
There's an editor, Jim Williams, wasn't it?
Jim Williams, yeah.
He had you'd get your card punched, and then you'd get it punched again at the Portofino Inn, and that's how they determined the time.
And Red Ball Garage to this day advertises, has a plaque basically giving thanks to the Red Ball Garage and the Cannonball, and they they foster that reputation, and the mythology of the Cannonball starts here, you know, and they use that, and they've changed hands, several times over the decades, and but everybody that comes in understands the importance of that plaque, and they all play into boy, you know, we really had something going. And so it's just a mystery that, you know, that the fire was lit, and the adventure has ignited people's interest for 50 years?
Better than that.
Oh, more than
More
that.
than that.
I was 50 years, and that was
Yeah.
I thought it was
75.
stealth, under the radar, and
Yeah.
now everybody in the world knows what we did.
Well, but we kept it.
Yeah,
Pardon me?
it's
Still use that exact time clock, and our timekeeper guy will punch us out of the red ball, get on an airplane with it still ticking, fly to Redondo Beach.
Really?
yeah.
Didn't know
So
that.
as Christopher was saying, so now when we do
Christopher is one of Brock's major supporters.
Absolutely.
And he and Ed Bolian have been friends for so long, and now I'm proud to say they're my friends.
So when we do a multi-car event now, we'll take a similar time clock of the same period, punch it, and then one of the guys will fly it to the Portofino. Now, when we pulled in 2013 to the Portofino,
They have a
exactly. They had
yes.
no idea back then what I was even talking about and why these three sweaty people were looking for a employee time clock to punch something. But now they have erected a sign that says the
Yeah.
Cannonball history, and it has the East Coast time, West Coast time, which
Yeah.
are somehow a few seconds off. But we've tried hard
Yes.
to get them to synchronize these things.
But they do. They advertise against the Cannonball Run, so it's kind of hard to keep it secret.
And the house beer on
Well,
draft
and
is
the
a
movie
Cannonball
did.
Run
I
IPA.
mean, the movie just blew it
I know,
open.
but it didn't name us in the movie, you know.
Well, that's coming.
They know now it was
Oh,
us.
I know
You
that.
got anybody better than Dom DeLuise to play my part this time?
He's dead, by the way.
I know that. So one night, Jane and I are out
So
having.
is Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah, well,
I know, and I'm not going to be too far behind her either.
one night Jane and I were out in Los Angeles. We were friends with Ruth Buzzy and her husband Kent Perkins, and we were talking about the Cannonball. And we were joking. I said, you know, Dom DeLuise played my part. Well, Kent's doing this, and he says, "Here, Dom's on the phone. He wants to talk to you."
There we go. Amazing. Who's next?
There was another movie that I believe preceded Cannonball Run called Gumball Rally.
Oh God, please don't say that
No,
word.
don't go down that road.
Oh please, he'll come back from the dead.
I
Too soon.
just wondered if Brock had any input into that movie.
No, they stole the idea from him, and he I'm laughing. That's because he's dead. He killed me if he was alive. Brock got trapped on a flight, and the movie they were showing was Gumball Rally. He came off that plane like shit from a goose. I've never seen him so upset in my entire life, and it was hard for me not to laugh, but anyway, yeah, no, he was furious. But long story short, they basically cut him out of taking that property and running with it. He didn't have the money in those days to fight legal battles. You just don't have enough money to keep doing that. So that was a very sore spot for him.
But we're not advising that you protest the showing of
no,
this
no,
next
no,
week
no,
here
no,
at Savoy.
no.
Right here.
Besides the awesomeness of saying I won the Cannonball, is there a prize or an award or a trophy?
No. Isn't it marvelous for Americans? I will tell you that we were looking to obviously revive the movie The Cannonball Run, and see if we tackle it one more time. But we have had not so much now, things are looking up and are fine, but for the first 3 or 4 years, my partner's been trying to sell the property, but he couldn't find any comedian writers that knew that you would run a race for no prize. That the youth just didn't understand that concept of doing that event and throwing your money and all that stuff into it and not being able to give a prize at the end of the movie or the race.
The prize was making it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
actually,
The end of the
if
movie.
you go out in the lobby, you'll
No,
see
it's
the
the end of the
Maurice
race.
is out there.
Yeah.
You can tell about the story of Maurice.
Oh,
Maurice G. Bauer.
Maurice G. Bauer was the head, I guess, the big trophy at the end of the Cannonball, if you won. And it was found in the French Quarter of New Orleans by two of the people that had run in one of the prior Cannonball races. And they were going shopping, antiquing in the French Quarter, and they saw this huge, wonderful bust of a gentleman from South America, a gentleman, and obviously from a wealthy family, but it was in the antique shop, and they decided to buy it and use it as a trophy for someone who wins the Cannonball. I mean, there was as much thought given to that as there was about how much flour I should put in my soup. I mean, it made absolutely no sense whatsoever. But Maurice, like everything else attached to the Cannonball, was kind of just another iron in the spike of Cannonball lore, because it's just this bronze. It means absolutely nothing, but it is the official what is it?
Trophy.
Trophy
Yeah.
of.
Did we ever know who Maurice G. Bauer was?
No, and I even tried to get like an antique.
Antiques Roadshow to look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried everything, and it was just Maurice G. Bauer, and it was South America, but I could never find a connection.
I think we should make something up.
We should
Well,
work on that.
we did.
Christopher?
I think we did, but it got lost along the way because we're not very good sticker tours.
All right, we've got one right here in the front.
Excellent.
I'm curious how long it takes to burn through the 67 gallons, and if you wait for that for a rest stop and driver change.
So Alex in the M5, he had about 40 odd gallons, and so he did it on 5 fuel stops, and I wanted to do it on 3. And so that was kind of the thought. We averaged right at 100 miles per hour, so you're burning through it in 6-7 hours.
Oh, we had a team. Tom and I figured it out. Whoever was driving the car, we pulled into the gas pump. Now, when the 31-gallon gas tank's in this car, you can't use a filler on the outside. It's a big filler in the inside. So whoever's driving would pull the hood release and get out and start pumping the fuel. The other guy would go to the bathroom, and we had a little zip-up bank envelope with cash. And then he'd run back, finish pumping the car, and the driver would go in and pay for the gas, and then we'd be on our way. Well, we did that in a station one night, and someone thought we must have robbed somebody because they locked the door. It was hard to pay them.
Yeah, and that's an issue because, when we did it in 2013, it had not occurred to me that it would be advantageous to pay in cash, and so I was using an American Express card, and I was not aware of the fact that American Express
Leaving a paper trail.
used algorithms to track for fraud. And so we got to our second fuel stop in Groom, Texas, and none of my credit cards would work anymore. And I had my co-drivers had gone in to use the bathroom, and I'm yelling, "Come out, one of y'all needs to pay for this." And when we got finally back on the road after a 12-minute fuel stop rather than the 7 or so it generally took, I got all the fraud alerts and calls, and they said, yeah, we noticed that you were in Ohio and then in Texas, and there were no flights that could have possibly gotten you there. And so I said, I'm not going to explain why I was able to get there, but I can assure you that I will not be without my credit cards, and I'd like everything to be approved for the next 24 hours.
Well, we stopped at one fuel stop because this car normally would hold 16 gallons.
Right.
We're pumping 30 gallons in it. Gas station guy came out and got under the car to see where the fuel was going.
Excellent.
We've got one there in the middle.
Thank you.
Considering the post-COVID era now, and it seems that probably all the time and safety has been wrung out of this competition, what do you see for the future of the Cannonball? Because people won't stop.
That's a great question. The question is post-COVID, what does it mean for the continued pursuit? And I think when you talk about what you win or what you get out of it, the thing that you get out of Cannonball is really the chance to meet other insane people that share your obsessions and become friends with them.
Yes.
And I think that's been the greatest treasure for most of us, is to be able to find like-minded lunatics that would indulge us in this sort of thing. And so, when you look at the times and the pace and the power, that E63 makes 850 wheel horsepower, and they use 30 spotter cars driving at pace ahead of them, and every gadget that every dollar could possibly have. And I think you're right that all the good might be wrung out of it. But one of the things that I always say before I pray on top of the dumpster at Darien as we head out on this lunacy is that you don't need a good time to have a great time. And I think that's a really important idea, that I've had a lot more fun doing it slower than I have going fast. We did it a couple of years ago in an old breaking down Rolls Royce dressed up as sheiks, and which I had to sandbox a little bit of the cultural appropriation issues there, but it was a blast. And so it's you have a lot more fun when you have the right attitude about it.
Well, if you have a lot more fun if you make it to the end.
That does help. Yeah, that's it. And the ambulance, which they drove in 1979, was the same ambulance that was used in the movie.
And we still have it. It's been restored, and it's been used in lots of appearances in events, and a lot of DJ radio stations do the Dom DeLuise look-alike thing, and take it to all kinds of.
You're famous,
and
Bill.
really, the offshoots of imagination are just great. And to Ed's points about the future, I think that the most beautiful thing that's happened out of this is the bonding that we see an awful lot of fathers and sons do this together. We see, yeah. And we had a family, father and son from Britain, come to Long Island. That's where we met up with you the first time, and it was father and son. And the son is so interested in the cannonball that wherever they run a cannonball, there's a Dubai cannonball. There's cannonball everywhere around the globe. The father and son go to watch and be part of it, and that's their time together. And that's not a thing that it doesn't happen a lot, but we're seeing a lot of the fact that families are taking an interest in doing something together that they feel is safe and has imagination, and the people that are fans, they're fans of each other. The Cannonball, yes, but they've made buddies and people that are very, very dear to them, and from all over the world that come over here to the United States. If somebody's sick or is having a house that's burned down and needs to have some stuff rebuilt and can't afford it, the word goes out amongst the fans, and a lot of the time they all come together and they build that house, just like the good old days when the farmers had problems. And it's lovely. It really is very rewarding. So, there.
Okay, well, that was a great program. Thank you. I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank everybody for coming. And hopefully we will see you again in January when we'll have a program about Shelby's. So be on the lookout for that coming up. So thanks again, everybody. Appreciate it.
It was fun.
Have a great evening.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.